In just 3 months, I helped my client generate over 400,000 total followers and 134 million views, and in this video, I'll be telling you exactly how we did it. Now, for those of you guys who have seen my content before, you know that I mainly work with founders, coaches, and business owners, and my team takes over their entire show from content system. But especially with almost all of my clients creating educational content, these types of numbers are basically unheard of, and even many celebrities who have created entertainment content haven't seen the type of growth like my client did. So this is Alex. You've probably seen his content before on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. And before working with us, he was creating primarily entertainment content. So he was creating montages and videos mainly promoting his songs. And doing this, he was able to grow to over 1.5 million followers on TikTok, 450,000 followers on Instagram, and over 250,000 subscribers on YouTube. But despite this, his followers didn't have much value because they were all based from entertainment. Now, creating types of content like this did allow him to scale to 5 figures a month just being a creator and also with his Spotify earnings. However, he wanted to branch out of music. So this is going to be a summarized breakdown of how we took Alex's personal brand and shifted it from more of an entertainment page to a business page, right? Allowing him to turn all of his followers into leads for his business. Now, at the time we started working together, he was rolling out with a new software that he just created called Heavy Influence, where you could schedule posts on IG, TikTok, YouTube, main social media platforms. However, these scheduled posts would not limit your reach. And this is a really big problem because a lot of these third-party scheduling tools like Hootsuite or Sprout Social, they have reported to limit your reach on posts that are scheduled, so a lot of people don't use them. So like always for all of my clients, the first step has to be identifying your ICP. And this was a lot different from a lot of the clients that I've actually worked with because he already had a massive audience. So the challenge wasn't really building an audience from scratch, but it was converting an existing audience to a different kind of audience, right? So we weren't building an audience from scratch. We were just filtering out and converting the audience he built from entertainment and focusing it around business. So the main ICP that we developed was content creators and social media managers who post content multiple times per week and need an easier way to plan, schedule, and manage their posting without sacrificing reach. So now let's get into the ICP breakdown of why exactly we built this out for him. So the main people that we're trying to attract are content creators and social media managers. So content creators are posting consistently across multiple platforms, managing their own scheduling 99% of the time, and trying to grow their audience without burning out on the operational side of content, so on the ticky-tacky stuff like posting. Social media managers are doing the same thing but at a larger scale, right? They're managing multiple client accounts simultaneously, hitting posting deadlines, and being directly accountable for the results their content delivers, right? So both groups have this one thing in common. Inconsistency costs them, so this is the exact group that we're targeting, right? So obviously our tool can pose as a benefit to them and how they could scale and make more money with social media. Now, for the second part of his ICP, we obviously had post content multiple times per week. This basically just acts as a qualifier that separates people who actually need the tool from everyone else who doesn't really need it and wouldn't benefit from it, right? So someone posting content once or twice a week and doesn't really feel the friction the same way as these social media managers, they shouldn't be accessing the tool. But someone posting 5, 6, 7 times a week across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube simultaneously knows exactly how painful and time-consuming manual scheduling is. So obviously those would be the exact ICP that we want to target when posting content and attracting people to the tool. Now for the third part of his ICP, we had without sacrificing reach, which is a very, very important part, probably the most important part of this entire ICP build out. So this is what made Alex's tool stand out. This was his tool's wow factor. His software didn't lead to less reach like most tools that his ICP already tried. You get the convenience of scheduling without paying for it with your reach. And for this ICP specifically, that single detail is the difference between a tool they'll try once and a tool they'll pay every single month for. Now, there were a lot of changes and bottlenecks that we had to overcome for Alex's content, but just so I can keep this video to only the most important changes that may apply to you guys, I'm going to take a deep dive into the 3 main problems that he had and how he fixed them to not only help grow his accounts, but also help scale his business. So let's get started with the 3 main bottlenecks. Now, number 1 was lack of reach. Now, at the time, Alex was getting a ton of reach on his platforms, right? 22 million views, 18 million views, 16 million views. He was having absolute bangers. But the problem was a lot of the reach that he was getting was from non-qualified eyes that weren't within his ICP. He was getting some qualified eyes because obviously he was casting such a large umbrella, but a lot of these, I would say only 5 to 10% were within his ICP. So many people in this situation probably would have switched his content strategy to a heavy mix focused on middle funnel and bottom of funnel content, which I've done for a lot of my clients as well. But at this stage of his journey, if he were to completely stop producing the content that he had been for years, it would have just backfired and completely tanked his reach, leading to no qualified leads checking out his content at all. But at the same time, since only 5 to 10% of the followers he was getting were within his ICP, he needed to start posting content actually speaking to his ICP. So in this situation, what would you do? Number one, put your brand on the line and potentially sacrifice your reach by focusing on middle of funnel and bottom of funnel content. Or would you continue posting top of funnel content that generates reach, but only a small portion of your audience actually aligns with your business? Now, both of these offers, had good upside, and they also had significant downsides. So what we actually did was implement both. On his main account, we switched his content style completely to middle and bottom of funnel content, talking about his journey in business and what he learned about his education and obviously his social media scheduling tool. And yes, this did ultimately lower his reach on his main account, but you'll see why this completely didn't matter at all in a second. We also created secondary accounts for him that continued to push out his main top of funnel content style to bring him in more eyes, and we started focusing his main account more on content that was related to his business. So on one side, we had the secondary accounts that we launched for him, pushing out the top of funnel content, and we had all of that funneling over to his main page, which was middle of funnel and bottom of funnel. Just to dig more into this, when we first started working together, we took a deep dive into his brand, understood what formats were working best and what formats were bringing in the most qualified reach. And to be completely honest, a lot of the formats weren't bringing in ICP, but there were some videos that attracted more of his TAM than others. For those of you who don't know what that means, TAM is basically your total addressable market. So basically anyone who could benefit from using your services. So for Alex, this was basically just individuals and businesses that use social media to generate revenue and need tools to consistently plan, schedule, and manage their content. An analogy I like to use, and I've said in other YouTube videos as well, is to think of your TAM as the entire ocean and your ICP as the specific fish in that open that are the best to catch, right? So you could get any fish in the entire ocean, which would be your TAM, but specifically the best fish to catch are going to be your ICP, right? But obviously for your top funnel content, you are going to want to target your TAM, so which will include eyes of your ICP, but also won't, right? So it's good to find the right mix of how much top funnel content you should post and how much of your TAM you should attract. We created what we call TAM pages, which were basically just sub-accounts on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube that pushed videos out daily that followed the winning formats that he had previously on his main account. So these videos were mainly top-of-funnel content and entertainment-based, but attracted his total addressable market. With your top-funnel content, keep in mind that you don't want to be targeting your ICP because that's just going to turn your top-funnel content into your middle-funnel content, right? It's not top-of-funnel content if you're highly hyper-focused on your ICP, right? Your top-funnel content should be directed towards your TAM so you could address the whole market that is able to buy from you. And just for your information, we have only launched these side pages for a couple of our clients in the past in very specific cases where they would actually see a return on mass distribution. For Alex, it was because he already built a huge brand before working with us. But for a majority of our clients, we primarily handle their main pages because that's where the reach is the most important, and obviously that's where conversions are the strongest. And a very important part of these sub accounts is that we made sure to tag his main account in the bio and also drop the link to his scheduling tool. And because of this, there were two different markets that we were addressing. Number one, this allowed us to address the ready-to-buy market. So anyone that came across his page and happened to be a part of his ICP and interested in the tool could access it and use the app directly from the description. So anyone who checked out his page and was instantly ready to buy could easily access the tool from the link in the description. And then we were also targeting the problem unaware / not ready to buy audience, right? So people who weren't sure what his tool did or what he was actually doing, what his business was, or people who just weren't confident that the tool worked or that if it, provided any value. They could instantly go to his main page where they would get nurtured from his middle funnel and bottom funnel and eventually download the software. And as you could tell from the start of this video, his side accounts just completely took off and started to bring in more views and reach than his main page originally did. But in general, establishing this combination between top funnel and middle funnel content and having them all intertwined within each other, it allowed for him to continue to bring in more eyes and traffic, while also having a center page basically acting as just a lead magnet where he could turn and convert these eyes into buyers. Now, the second problem that we had is that we needed to shift his brand messaging to align with the new direction that he wanted to take his accounts. So the question was, how could we slowly shift his audience and content to be focused around entertainment to business videos? Now, we didn't want to do this overnight because, like I said, just pulling the plug on what was already working would have just tanked his reach and undone years of audience building. So what we did was gradually start shifting the messaging on his main page toward his identity as a founder and his knowledge around social media and business growth, right? And the way we did this was by introducing specific content styles that created a natural bridge, the bridge between his entertainment world and his business world. And another important thing to understand is that he needed to build up his authority and trust as well at this point because people did not know or think of him as an entrepreneur. So we needed to break that initial skepticism and remove any negative beliefs surrounding his brand. So the content style that we introduced that would create that natural bridge and break that skepticism was just simple talking head videos. I like to call them FaceTime style because it's basically just handheld videos with your phone, right? And these videos were super casual, almost like he was sending a video message to a friend, right? And this format specifically created something that no amount of high quality or polished editing could do, which was basically just a general sense of personal connection and trust. And in these videos, it would basically just be bursts of value related to his business, and we slowly started incorporating more and more of that type of content into his pipeline, slowly shifting his ecosystem to be more focused around business, right? And therefore, he wouldn't continue to be known as just the funny music guy, but rather the owner of Heavy Influence, his scheduling tool. Now, his third problem is that he had no way to track what was actually working. And a lot of creators completely overlook this, but it's actually one of the most important parts when building a content system that actually generates results for you and builds you a ROI. What I mean by this is that you can't only track simple metrics like views and likes, but you need to understand what pieces of content are bringing in the most ICP, which formats were converting, followers into software users, which videos are attracting TAM versus just random entertainment viewers, right? And this obviously allows you to know what videos to push out more and what videos you need to cut out. Because obviously, even if a video gets a high amount of views or a high amount of engagement, if that engagement and the traffic that comes with it is completely garbage, it's not going to bring you any results and it's not going to turn into money. And at the volume we were posting across his main account and multiple TAM pages, managing multiple pages overall on 3 different platforms, that becomes a massive problem, tracking. Because if you don't know exactly what's working, you can't double down on it, and if you can't double down on what's working, you simply can't scale. So one of the first things that we did do was implement our content tracking system. This system basically tracks all of metrics and averages them out for each content type. So we have one place where we can track, all of the outliers. So we have insights, performance, our dashboard where we can see all of our statistics. We have the full content pipeline for all of the accounts so Alex could monitor over the exact system that our editors and strategists were going through and the exact pipeline that we were using to create content. And like I said, we were tracking all the in-depth metrics, right? The view to follower ratios, average watch time, average ICP score, what videos were actually leading to leads and high quality followers, etc. Some of that stuff that you can't just track by looking at your service Instagram page. And for Alex specifically, this tracking system was what allowed us to identify which of his formats were pulling in his TAM most effectively, which styles were converting his TAM followers into ICP followers on his main page, and which bottom of funnel pieces of content were actually driving people to check out his software, just so we weren't throwing shit at the wall and guessing. So these were the 3 main bottlenecks that we were able to overcome and solve in the first couple of weeks we worked with him, and then eventually the following months, everything just blew up. So I'll just let the results speak for themselves here. So in the first month, we generated 35 million views for him. In the second month, we generated close to 50 million views, 49.3 million. In the third month, we did about the same, around 49 million views. In total, in the first 90 days, he was able to generate with the first 90 days after building out these side accounts and obviously turning his main account to be focused more around bottom of funnel, he totaled to around 134 million views. Now that's great and all, but let's break down what those views actually led to in terms of followers, building a fan base, and obviously building his business. So in total, with all of the side accounts that we helped monitor and scale with him, these pages have generated an extra 1 million followers since our time working together. We have pages hit 600,000 followers, 200,000, 60, 80,000 followers. We've been hitting crazy amounts of numbers with these, and they're not even his main accounts. He's not even touching these pages. It's solely just the members of clippers and editors who actually know what they're doing and know how to create content that converts. And keep in mind, we were having all of his leads directed straight to his main account and his app, so nothing was getting lost in the pipeline. And overall, in the last year, he's been able to 6x his revenue with his business, obviously with the assistance of the assets that we help scale for him, which is these accounts. And like I always say, his growth wasn't fully because of us. Alex is an absolute grinder, and he's probably one of the most hardworking clients that I've ever worked for, with complete honesty. But through our content strategies and systems that we built out for him, we 100% helped him turn his personal brand into a complete money printing machine. Now, if you are a founder, coach, or business owner looking to implement our done for you short form content systems for your business, just click the link in the description to apply. See you later.